Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're keeping a close eye on the market, you know we need to talk about Mississauga City Centre. Today, we are taking a highly analytical, numbers-first approach to a topic that is on the minds of so many investors right now. We're doing a deep dive into the realities of investing in Mississauga City Centre condos in the year 2026. Because as an investor, you simply cannot rely on gut feeling alone, right? You need hard data. So I'll be your guide today as we unpack the financial modeling and show you exactly what to expect from this incredibly dynamic real estate market.
Here is how we're breaking it all down today. We'll start with the market context of Square One condos, establish a base scenario, run the essential four-number test, explore some real-world financing simulations, evaluate the best zones and market risks, and wrap up with the bottom line. Let's get right to it.
All right, part one, Square One condos in 2026 and the overall market context. Okay, let's start with a big number, $2,150. As of August 2026, this is your average monthly rent for a one-bedroom condo right in the city center. Now compare that to the $2,232 you might see for multi-bedroom spots further out. This $2,150, it proves one thing for sure. The Square One location premium is alive and well. Renters are absolutely willing to pay top dollar to be steps away from Celebration Square, the major transit hubs, and massive employment nodes. The demand is baked right in.
But, and this is a massive but, we have to look at the full picture. The headline takeaway here, the gross rental yield, that top line number, looks totally reasonable. But when you start talking about leveraged deals, the net cash flow gets incredibly tight. Why? Because you're buying into these gorgeous, amenity-rich towers, right? The high maintenance fees combined with today's debt service costs are just eating into your actual take-home cash. It is so crucial to know the difference between what your tenant pays and what actually stays in your bank account at the end of the month.
Which brings us to part two, establishing our baseline condo scenario. To really see how this works, we need a laboratory setup, so to speak. We're going to stress test a very standard condo profile today. Imagine a purchase price of $550,000. We're projecting an annual rent of $26,400. Now factor in annual condo fees of $6,480 and property taxes calculated on an MPAC assessment of $350,000. For our financing, we are assuming a 3.40% variable rate on a 5-year term with a 25-year amortization. These exact numbers, they form the absolute bedrock of the analysis we're doing today, so keep them in mind. Moving on to part three, the four-number test. This is exactly how you analyze the deal. If you want to evaluate real estate like a pro, you need a disciplined framework. Here is a simple four-step sequence. Step 1, we start with our gross annual rent of $26,400. Step 2, subtract your operating costs, those maintenance fees and taxes we just mentioned, to find your net operating income, or NOI. That brings us down to $16,112. Step 3 is where reality hits. Compare that NOI to your annual debt service. Are you cash flow positive, or are you bleeding money? And finally, step 4, only add principal paydown and any appreciation assumptions at the very end. Seriously, never let the dream of future appreciation blind you to today's operating costs. So, this brings up an absolutely essential term, cap rate. In simple terms, it's your net operating income divided by the purchase price. Why do we care? Because it isolates the property's performance before you even look at the mortgage. It shows you the pure return of the real estate itself, completely independent of how you chose to finance it. It is brilliant for comparing apples to apples. All right, part 4, financing scenarios explored. Let's run the simulations. This is where things get really interesting. How you finance the property changes literally everything. Let's break this down. If you drop all cash, putting 100% down, you invest $550,000, your annual cash flow is a positive $16,112, and your total ROI sits at a very stable 5.93%. But watch what happens when we start using leverage. At 20% down, your ROI jumps to 16.20%, which sounds great, but your cash flow just went negative by over $10,000 a year. Drop below 20%, and those CMHC insurance premiums kick in. At 15% down, you're paying a 3.10% premium, cash flow drops to negative $12,546, even with ROI hitting 19.90%. And at 10% down, with a 4% CMHC premium, you are bleeding $14,500 every single year in negative cash flow, despite an on-paper ROI looking like a whopping 27.90%.
Let's put those two extremes side by side because the contrast is quite shocking. The all-cash option? It's the only one actually putting positive cash in your pocket every month. Lowest risk clears baseline. On the flip side, the 10% down scenario gives you this incredible ROI on paper, nearly 28%, but it carries massive risk. You literally have to feed this property out of your own pocket to the tune of $14,500 a year just to keep it afloat.
So, that naturally brings up a pretty big question, doesn't it? Something that forces you to rethink traditional investing wisdom. Is a higher ROI always better?
The answer, my friends, is absolutely not. Look, ROI can skyrocket purely because of leverage, not because the condo itself is performing any better. As we just proved, chasing that high ROI by lowering your down payment completely destroys your monthly cash flow. Plus, it dramatically magnifies your renewal risk. Imagine if interest rates spike when your 5-year term is up. A property that is already bleeding cash could become completely unmanageable almost overnight.
Let's pivot to Part 5, Best Zones and Market Risks. Where should you actually buy and what should you watch out for? If you're ready to jump into this strategy, where are the sweet spots? The strongest candidates are one-bedroom or one-bedroom plus den units, right near Transit and Square One. I'm talking about places like Solmar's Edge Towers, specifically the Oro Suites at 24 Elm Drive West. The Rathburn Road and Webb Drive corridors are also fantastic zones with proven tenant demand. But remember, renters want the goods: in-suite laundry, parking, and modern finishes. Those are non-negotiables for premium rent. Oh, and a pro tip, a building's fee structure and reserve fund health matter way more to your bottom line than just snagging a unit on a prestigious street.
Now here is a number you absolutely cannot ignore: 3.1%. According to the CMHC, Canada's purpose-built rental vacancy rate bumped up to 3.1% in 2025 from 2.2% the year before. Add to that, the average condo in Mississauga is now sitting on the market for about 36 days. Those days of tossing a sign on the lawn and getting 5 tenant offers in 24 hours, they are cooling down. You have to underwrite conservatively and prep for potential vacancy periods between tenants.
I also need to give you a bit of a reality check regarding appreciation. In our model, we used a 3% appreciation rate. But listen to me, that is strictly a paper gain. It's unrealized. It is not cash in your pocket unless you actually sell or refinance the property. Between 2023 and 2026, Mississauga condo prices were essentially flat or even slightly declining. So any appreciation assumption you plug in, treat it as a long-term bonus for illustrative purposes, definitely not a short-term guarantee.
And that brings us to Part 6, the bottom line. Let's wrap this up.
The core lesson of this explainer is simple, but it is so often ignored by eager investors. Higher leverage absolutely raises your paper ROI, but it also identically skyrockets your financial risk and your monthly carrying costs. Paper returns do not pay your monthly bills. If you go the highly leveraged route, you must be absolutely certain you have the cash reserves to sustain those negative monthly flows. Bottom line, never ever judge a condo investment by ROI alone.
Navigating these numbers takes steady, experienced hands. Look, as a real estate professional with over 20 years in the game, I have seen the housing affordability crisis firsthand. I work day in and day out, helping buyers and sellers master these exact market dynamics. If you need expert, mathematically grounded guidance for your buying and selling needs in Mississauga, please reach out to me. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. Let me leave you with this one final thought to ponder. Are you fully prepared to stress test your next investment before you sign the papers?